So we're going to start our headband with a slip knot. How I make mine is twice around the index finger, I'll hold it at the bottom, back loop, front loop, bring the back over the front. Now this is the back. You want to bring that over the front, off your finger, tighten it down, put your hook in, and close it to the hook, and make sure it's not too tight around your hook. Holding the yarn is also pretty important, so in your left hand, I just loop it around my pinky finger, then I take my index finger, put it right under, and that's how I hold my yarn. You'll find your own way of holding your yarn. Everybody's going to be a little different. This is just how I like to hold mine. So we're going to start off our headband with a chain of 151. So in order to chain, you yarn over, and then you pull it through the loop that's on your hook. That's one. Do it again. Yarn over, pull it through the loop on the hook. And you just keep doing that until you have 151 chains. I have my chain of 151 stitches, so what you want to do is count 40 chains in from the end and place a stitch marker in that 40th chain. And on the end that you began, count 40 chains in, place another stitch marker in the 40th chain. Now what we're going to do is we're going to slip stitch in every stitch until we hit our stitch marker. So you want your slip stitches for this project to be a little loose, so just pull up a little bit, give it a little bit of a bigger loop before you do your first slip stitch. Then you want to go into that stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, and then pull it through the other loop on the hook. That is your slip stitch for the first one. So you want to pull up a little, give it a bigger loop, go into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then just pull it through the loop, the bigger loop you created. Making them bigger will make it easier to go back into when we come back the other way. So you want them to be a little loose. So bring it up. Now just keep slip stitching until you get to your first stitch marker. Remove the stitch marker and go into that stitch as well. This is what your chain should look like. Some parts of it might stick out a little more than others depending on how much you pulled, but don't worry about that because at the end these are going to be the handles of the headband, and this is what you'll use to tie the headband on, and they'll get stretched out when we're done with the headband, so they'll just all even out, so you don't need to worry about it. So you want to chain 9, skip 9 chains. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then you want to go into the 10th stitch with a treble crochet stitch. So you want to yarn over twice, go into that stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop. You have 4 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through the 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Then chain 9. Skip 9 chains, and you want to go into the 10th stitch with a treble crochet stitch. So you yarn over twice, go into the stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, 4 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Chain 9. And you want to continue doing this until you reach your 2nd stitch marker. I've gotten to where I've reached my stitch marker. I chain 9, and since there's skipping 9 here, go ahead and take out that stitch marker, and we're going to go into that stitch with a slip stitch. Then you'll pull up a little and slip stitch your way into the next 40 stitches, loose slip stitches, until you reach the end. So go ahead and loosely slip stitch your way back, and I will meet you before we start row 2. So this is what it should look like so far. You should have 7 open rectangles and your 2 handles. So get started on row 2. We're going to chain 1, turn your work around, and we're going to slip stitch our way back, but keep in mind, when you look at the slip stitches from the top, we're not going to go under both loops. We're just going to go under the top loops. So if you have a hard time knowing where that is, just look at your slip stitches straight on. This is going to be the first one we go into, because we always skip the first one, because that's our chain 1. And we're going to go right here, yarn over, slip stitch, pull up a little, and you're just going to go into these top bumps. You don't have to worry about going into both. If you have a hard time, look at it from the top. We're just going to go in this one. Pull up a little. See, when you make your slip stitches looser, they're easier to get your hook under when you have to go back through them, because slip stitches are very, very tight. Go ahead and keep slip stitching until you get to where the handle opens up. So you're going to stop when you get to this area. So now we've reached the end. We've slip stitched all the way down. And what we're going to do is chain 4. And you may need to look at the front side of the stitches in order to get this. I don't need to because I've made these so many times. But if you need to count by looking at the front side of the stitches, that's fine. You're going to skip 4 because you chained 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and you'll go into this 5th stitch, which from the back, if you want to just do it from the back, you just count the top bumps. 1, 2, 3, 4. You go into this 5th stitch. Now you'll go into it with a treble, just like the last row, and you have 2 options. You can just go into that 5th stitch at the top loop, or you can go below and go under the top loop and the back loop, or if you feel like getting your hook under the 2 V stitches, that's fine. I just go under the bottom, pull up a loop, and work my treble. And it works out just fine. So now you want to chain 9. I apologize if there's any drastic light changes. We got some clouds just now that I wasn't really expecting, and now it's making things difficult. Alright, so chain 9, yarn over twice, then you want to skip 9. So if it's easier for you to just turn your chain so you can see the top stitches to count, that'd be easier. Or you just count the bumps. So we're coming out of this stitch, so we'll count 1, 2, 3, 4. The 5th loop will be the treble that you worked. 6, 7, 8, 9. So we'll go into this 10th one. Yarn over twice. Chain 9. And you want to continue your chain 9 treble in the 10th until you hit the center of your last section, and I'll show you what to do from there. So this is my last section before I reach the end, my last treble that I need to make. So it's in the center of that last section. So now you want to chain 4 and I'm going to slip stitch it to where that section begins. I made the first slip stitch kind of tight. Bring it up a little. Always remember, don't make your slip stitches too tight for this project. There we go. Alright, then we're going to slip stitch our way all the way down into those top bumps. So we're at the end of row 2. We've slip stitched our way to the end. So this is going to be our last row. You just want to chain 1, turn your work around, and we'll start slip stitching into the second chain from the hook. So we skip this first one and we go into the next one. Just that top loop with a slip stitch. And this row, you don't have to be as loose about your slip stitches since it is the final row. So if you don't want to worry about making it bigger for to fit the next row. You don't have to. This is the last row. So just slip stitch your way back to right here where everything opens up again, and we'll finish our last row. Alright, so now we're to the mesh section, and this is our last row. Let's go ahead and chain 9, count 9 stitches, yarn over twice, treble crochet into the 10th stitch, continue that until you get to not this small section in the last, but the end. This last section, after you make your treble in this last section, the big section here, we'll chain 9, connect here, slip stitch our way to the end. We trebled in the section before this little triangle at the end. So last thing we need to do is chain 9, slip stitch to the first stitch of the handle, slip stitch our way back all the way to the end of this row. This one came out really tight. There we go. And like I said before, this last row, you don't have to worry so much, row 3, about making your slip stitches loose, because this is the last row we're going to do. You could, very well just make them loose and then do another row if you want your headband to be thicker. I usually just stop here. It seems these 3 they work well with these 3 rows because they do spread out. So you probably wouldn't need to make it much bigger than this because it'll spread out just fine if you want it to, or if you want it to just stay long and thin like bricks, you can go ahead and do that as well. One more. There you go. Reach the end, so chain 1, pull it through. And cut your yarn off, pull it through, tighten, and the handle, just give them a tug, and they'll straighten out. Doesn't that look nice? So if you had any stitches that were kind of funky or too big for each other, just pull them. They'll flatten out. No worries. So now we just need to sew in the ends. And if you have a hard time threading yarn needles, just go ahead and wrap it around the needle. Pinch it down. Slide the needle out. And I just do kind of a sawing motion. Jumps right on there. This is what you should have.